Let's continue where we left off yesterday. We're learning this week's Torah reading, which is Parshat Akev. And here God is, he's encouraging the Jews that they're going to go into the land of Israel. And even though they're going to be greatly outnumbered, but don't be afraid, because God, same God that took you out of Egypt, did all these amazing miracles for the last 40 years, as he is still with you. Same God. And he'll send the tzira, it said he'll send this hornet, or the Evan Ezra says some sort of a disease. Don't be afraid of the nations in front of you, because God is a big God. And so let's continue. Let's just continue this, because it's continuing basically in the same vein. So it says, "V'nashal Hashem Elokecha esagoyim ha'elu," that God will deplete these nations in front of you, little by little. Little by little. Why little by little? Why not get rid of them all at once? Lo tuchal kol hazamer. You won't be able to destroy them at once. Why? Because you won't be able to settle the land so quickly. That the wild animals will start to take over. As soon as the animals sense there's no people in these cities, and the Jews have not yet settled, so then the wild animals will take over. So therefore God says, little by little, I'll destroy them in front of you. Rashi, what do you mean? That God doesn't want to destroy all your enemies at once, because it'll leave the cities empty and wild animals will come. Says Rashi, that's what it really depends on. Doesn't it say that if you do what God wants, then you won't be afraid of the animals. The animals will see that you are connected to God and that you're not afraid of them, and then they won't hurt you. Like it says, like it says in Job, that the wild animals will make peace with you. Something like it was with Daniel in the lion's den. But it was revealed in front of God that the Jews are going to sin, and it says that the animals are afraid, and naturally they have respect for a person. If a person acts like an animal, in other words, he follows all of his urges, then he's worse than an animal. So therefore, God knew they were going to, the Jewish people were going to sin, and that the animals would not be afraid of them. So he said, okay, I want you to take the land of Israel over, and I know you're going to do sin. So my advice is, conquer it little by little. I'll drive your enemies out little by little, so that the land will always be settled by somebody. God will put all of your enemies in front of you, and he will confuse them with a great confusion until you destroy them. Rashi, Hamam, Nikud Kometz, Hamam, not Humamu. Why? Because the mem, this is a grammar, is part of the word. Bahare, because sometimes it must, Hamam means you will confuse them. But it doesn't mean confuse them. It means there will be confusion. It's part of the word. Hamam. Harihu kamo v'hem otam. It will be hum, you will, negate them. And he brings several sources for this word. Let's look at the Balatorim. Hamam. What does it mean? Hamam. They will be like confused. Base Mosros. Hamam Mahuma Gadola. The Hamam Gilgol Agalato. There's another sentence where it says in Isaiah, Hamam. And it comes, you learn, it means that you will do to them what it did to Egypt. Like it says, V'yaseret Ofer Markavotov. It says that by the Egyptians, they came running after the Jewish people. They were so sure of themselves, and the Jewish people were on foot, and the Egyptians were skilled warriors, and they had these super chariots, which in those days it's like a tank against, foot soldiers with just like stones or something. What can they do against a tank? But so the only problem is that, for instance, tanks, they depend on their wheels. So if you can figure out a way to knock the wheels off of a tank, then the people inside of the tank are pretty much helpless. They can't do anything. All you have to do is just run away, and that's it. They can't go after you. And that's what it was when the Jews left Egypt, is God knocked off the wheels of the chariots. So he says that's what it means, a hamam, that they'll be all, how do you say, neutralized, so that they won't be able to do anything. Benatan, God said, Moses is talking about God, and God will put their kings into your hands. There were 31 kings in the land of Israel that the Jews had to go and conquer. So as God will put these kings in your hand, and you'll destroy their name from under the heaven. No one will be able to stand in front of you until you destroy all of them. The HaChaim says God will put their kings in your hands. What does it mean? B'chaim chayusam, that God will put them alive into your hands. Like it says, V'yotzi alav et chameshet malachim ha'ela el Yoshua. So it's not that you will just kill their leaders, but you will take them all prisoner. Take them all prisoner. P'silei Eloheihem tisrufum beish. And what about all the statues? The statues that they have to their gods? Burn them up in fire. Lo tachmod kesef v'zahav aleim. Don't even desire the money, the silver and the gold ornaments that are on there. Remember, we learned that yesterday. Don't desire it, and for sure don't take it to you. Why? Because maybe you'll trip up in it. Because this is the disgust of God. I know one person. Oh, where I was in France, and in France. So we went to, I don't remember where it was, the house of one of the Rothschilds. Now, the Rothschilds were all Jews, right? But I think they all married, at least maybe the one where I was, they didn't marry Jewish women, or at least this particular one didn't. And he was tremendously rich, and he collected all these like crosses and weird things. His whole house was just filled with it. The fact of the matter is, I didn't know that it was such a thing like that in his house, but it was just really sort of very shocking. So that's what he says. Come on, I'm just, just artifacts, and they're just, how do you say, collector's items. But the fact of the matter is that idolatry has a pull to it. It has an attraction to it. That's why the Jewish people worship the golden calf. So having one of these idols in your house, a person has a cross, who knows what they have, and there was a statue of Buddha or something, and in your house, so a person could say, I'm just a historian or something. But it could be that, maybe you'll say, let's see what happens if I do bow down to it. Come on, what, God forbid, what bad thing could come? And then a person can bow down, and it works. All of a sudden, he wins the lottery or something like that. Wow, hey, this is really great. And that's it. Then you're finished, right? Then a person's finished. So it says, pen tivokeshbo, because if you hold these items in your house, then maybe you're going to trip in it. Ki toev as Hashem elokechu, because it is despised by God. Despised by God. Okay, you can ask an obvious question. If it's so despised, then why do they work? Why is it that the person, he prays to this thing, and to the statue or whatever, and you see it's successful? Here you have these massive, huge churches all over the place, worth billions of dollars. I'm not sure how much they're with, ornate, Gothic, spires coming all over. And here the shuls, once in a while you see a nice shul, but generally speaking, they're all, gehakta places, and they're falling apart. Why is it that way? So the answer is, I don't know. That's God. He gives, Nebuchadnezzar conquer the whole world. That's pretty good. The church hasn't gotten that far yet. So he gave him good. Alexander the Great conquered the whole world. But for a while, that's the way God created the world. That it's possible to do sins, be a thief, be an idolater, and succeed. So that's why it says you're not going to be able to stand the test. Don't bring one of these things. Don't bring one of these disgusting idols or statues or representatives of something, of some higher power into your house, because you will be, how do you say, destroyed like it. You should be disgusted by it, because it is totally despicable. So you should despise not just the statue, but also the silver and the gold which is on it. Because it is not only bilavad yikra shalot tatzliach, will have caused that in the long run you're not going to succeed, but also yacharim et sharak, as well, you lose all the rest of your money as well. All right, let's go a little further. All of the mitzvahs that I am commanding. Now remember, this is Moses speaking to the Jews that are going to come into the land of Israel. Now those people that were in the land of Israel, they had idols, and the idols worked. I mean, they were very successful in the land of Israel. And so he says, now that you're going to take them over, don't think that you can somehow or other, appropriate or to utilize these idols. You can't. You have to totally destroy them. All the mitzvahs that I'm commanding you today, says Moses, this is God speaking through Moses. Be careful to do. Laman tichiu, in order that you should live, uruvitem, and that you should multiply, ubotem, and come and yirishtem et oretz, and take over the land of Israel that God commanded, he swore that he would give to your forefathers. Rashi, call them, it's all the commandments, and the Midrash says, im hitchalta b'mitzvah gomorato. It says all the mitzvahs. What does it mean? All the mitzvahs that you really haven't finished the commandments. You haven't really done the commandments until you finish it. So if you start, she'eno nikra mitzvah ella al shem gomro. It's all of the mitzvah. What does it mean? All the mitzvah. The whole mitzvah is only when you finish it. So here we have the same thing with Moses. Moses took the Jews out of Egypt, got the Torah, took them to the land of Israel, but he didn't finish it. He didn't take them into the land of Israel. He took them. He took them out of Egypt, got them the Torah through the desert, but he did not take them into the land of Israel. So the command, it's as though he didn't really finish this commandment. Like it says, as Atzmos Yosef, Asher Alu b'nei Yisrael miMitzrayim, Kivru b'Shechem. It says that the bones of Joseph died in Egypt. It says that Joseph made them swear that when they left Egypt, and this would be like, whatever is 200 something, no, 100 something years later, when they left Egypt, that they would take the bones of Joseph with them. It says they buried the bones in Shechem. Hello, Moshe Lovato, nitasek b'hem lalosam. What do you mean that it says that the Jewish people, they took the bones out and they buried them in Shechem? But it's not so. The one that really took Joseph out of Egypt was Moses. He was the one that took them out. He said they were buried in the river, and he took them out. They were in a cave, and he said, "All shore." And anyway, the bones. Moses was the one who took the bones of Joseph out of Egypt, and he brought them right to the border of Israel. But he didn't go into Israel. So who finished it? The Jewish people had to. So it says the Jewish people, they brought up the bones from Egypt. They didn't bring the bones up from Egypt. Moses brought them up. All the Jews did was they just buried them. Speak Legomer, because Moses did not complete the commandment, and the Jewish people did. So the whole entire commandment is called on their name. Interesting. All the mitzvahs that I Okay, now, first of all, it doesn't say all of the commandments. It says all of the mitzvah, all of the commandment, which I command you to do. You should do it in order that you'll live and you'll increase. It says the Sifrono. The intention over here is talking about the multitude of the Jews who, this is a message, what is that Moses is giving over to all of the Jewish people. What's the message? The message is Hasagas Hatzlachos Zmanios Anichlalos Begimel Mine Behem Orach Yomim, that to get temporary success in these three things: long life, generally speaking, that's health, children, and money. The Orach HaChaim also speaks about the same thing. It's called Bani Chaya Umazoni. What happened? What happened? Oh, here it is. Bani Chaya Umazoni. Children, health, and livelihood. This, when a person does the commandments, you will achieve all of them. Therefore, Tishmu Lasotam, you have to be careful to do them. And that's what he says over here. The Orach HaChaim explains it a little bit better. He says, here, Bani Chayim Mizoni, that children, health, and livelihood don't depend on your merit, but they depend on mazel. Sometimes a person can be a big tzaddik and he can suffer terribly, be very poor, and sometimes a person can be exactly the opposite and he can have beautiful children and etc. Ubone Amar, it says Moshe Khan, Lehamadavar, Chidush, that if the Jewish people, so what do we say, that children, etc., they don't depend on what you do. Now Moshe is telling you that now they do, yes they do. Moshe is giving them advice. Do the negative commandments and the positive commandments, all the commandments in general, and then you'll be promised you get these three things. That's what the Sifrono says. You'll get the three things together. That's what it says, all of the mitzvahs, in order that you should live, that's health, Ribisim, have children, Ubatam be reach them and take over the land, this is livelihood. So therefore we see that a person, the more that a person sinks himself into doing the commandments, throwing the commandments, so he's promised that he'll have children and all these other things, health and etc. And this is the sign. What's the sign? Avram, that the mazel was the mazel, that according to his zodiac, how he was born, it was impossible for him to have children. But because Avram decided to devote himself to serving God, so therefore everything changed and he had children. And that's why the Jewish people came from Yitzchak and Yaakov, etc. Remember the way, this whole way that God took you out of Egypt this 40 years in the desert in order to punish you, anoscha, lanasoso, and test you in order to know what is in your heart. Are you keeping my commandments or not? And this is always, there's a question over here. What does it mean? God is testing you in order that he should know if you serve him or not. I mean, God knows everything. Excuse me. God knows everything. There's nothing that God doesn't know. God really has to test you to see what you're made of. God knows what you're made of. He knows if you're going to stand up in a test or not. So it says the answer is not that God should know, that God is punishing you and testing you, ledat, that God should know. No, it means that you should come to this level of dat, that you should be attached to God or not. That's why he's giving you these tests, not for his sake, but for your sake, that you'll strengthen yourself. What does it mean? He wants to know if you'll keep his commandments or not. Lo tenasu, don't test God. V'lo taharher acharav, and don't think badly about God. What does this mean? Don't test God. God loves the Jews. God's going to benefit the Jews no matter what. The Jews in the end are going to get the Mashiach. They're going to get the third temple. All the Jews are going to return back to Judaism. They're going to clean up the Holy Land. There won't be any more murder and licentiousness and idolatry in the land of it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So the Jews can say, okay, listen, it's going to happen anyway, so just let me do what I want. So God is trying to tell us, listen, I'm trying to tell you how much I love you. And that no matter what you do, to show you that no matter what you do, unconditional love. And you should know that I don't really, nothing is forcing me to do this. I could just easily just wipe you all out. I could just stop creating you. I'm creating the whole universe. You don't know how lucky you are just to be created, right? So the Jewish people say, 1 second, but you're going to keep creating us anyway? Yeah, okay, so I'll do sins. He says, don't make it hard for God to love you. That's what he's saying. Don't make it difficult. If you're going to, so God is giving all these tests in order to know, do you keep his commandments or not? In other words, are you going to say, hey, I'm putting on tefillin, and I don't have a nice big car like that other person does. Hey, I keep Shabbos. Why don't I have a nice house? Why don't, etc. So don't test God. God knows what he's doing. He's giving you exactly what you need. Maybe not what you want, but he's giving you what you need. And therefore, your privilege is to be able to serve the creator of the universe and to come close to him. God punished you and he made you hungry. And he gave you to eat this manna. Asher lo yadata, that you did not know. This is the mimer that we're learning in the morning. Remember we talked about this? Laman huriecha, in order to let you know that not on bread alone does man live, but on all the utterances of God does man live. So there's the sikh of the Rebbe. There's another sikh of the Rebbe which we didn't do, and it says over here that God punished you and made you hungry, and he fed you the manna. So the simple meaning is it's three different things. That when you were in the desert, that a lot of times you were suffering, you didn't know where you were going in the desert, and it took a long time. And he made you hungry. What does it mean he made you hungry? That the Jewish people were, all they had to eat was this man, basically, and they wanted something more. But God did give you the man. That's a simple meaning. But there's also a little bit different. It says that God tortured you and he made you hungry by means of what? By giving you the man. And this also says in the Gemara, there's an explanation like that the man, like we talked about before, the manna, did not really satisfy a person. It just took away his hunger. It was like a snack. The man, maybe on Shabbat it was different. I don't know. But in any case, that's what the man was. So that's what it means that God punished you by giving you the man. A person would eat man. First of all, he only had a certain amount to eat. And it would always take away his hunger, but it would never make him like really sort of full and satisfied. That's what it says. But there's a different explanation. The different explanation is that the eating the man made everybody crazy. Why? Because everyone knew that this physical bread that they were eating, and some people had to even grind it up and bake it and knead it. So they knew that this bread was not coming from the ground and it wasn't coming from any natural place. It was coming from God. And it came for 40 years. It wasn't just like one day, all of a sudden, something came, it was some sort of an aberration. Maybe you could explain it that it was, somehow or other evaporation of meat from some, famine or something in a place and all the meat evaporated. I don't know. You can make some sort of an idea up. One day, 2 days, this is 40 years. 40 years, this bread came from heaven and no one had any idea where it was coming from. 40 years, it came down every single day. On Shabbos, it would come down a double portion. So every single day came this manna down from heaven, and the Jewish people ate it. They depended on it. They were nourished by it. So that tortured everybody. It tortured everybody because everybody became aware that God is not limited to being spiritual. That he actually made this bread and everyone was eating it. So it says that, and not from the bread does a person live, but from the utterance of the mouth of God does a person live. So it says, and we learned about this, that everything there is in the world, there's a spark of holiness. And that holiness, that's what really enlivens us. That spark of holiness is the reason why we're eating it. In other words, to use the food in order to serve God. That's the spark. And that's the reason we're alive, in order to use the world to serve God. Dad Zakanim, Vayancha, that God tortured you, B'derech, by making you travel around in the desert aimlessly, seemingly, for 40 years. Like it says, Ina B'derech Kochi. It says that my power is like weakened by the road. That's it, Yancha. Yarivecha, what does it mean, Yarivecha? How did God make them hungry? He didn't give them food for several days, only one for each day. That's Ravon. This is hunger. Like it says, a person that he has no food whatsoever, and he doesn't see any way of getting any food, so that person, he's already hungry. I don't know if this works with you, but it certainly works with me. When you finish the meal before Tisha B'Av or before Yom Kippur, right, in the nighttime. So what do? You before nightfall, before comes Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur comes with nightfall, right? So before nightfall, you're supposed to eat a nice big meal. And the same thing with Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, you eat a nice big meal before the fast. Yeah, as soon as you finish eating the meal, you go to shul, to daven, to pray in the nighttime. You're hungry, you're thirsty, you think you're going to die. You don't know what is it. I've never felt so hungry in my life. You just finished eating, a big half of a chicken and rice and who knows what to last you the whole day. And every other night, you don't necessarily eat a cookie or something before you go. You don't need to eat at the nighttime. You eat in the night, eat something. Here, you just finished eating this huge meal. It should just make you totally stuffed. And in the nighttime, you feel hungry because you know that the next day, you're not going to get any food. It's forbidden to eat on Yom Kippur, and it's forbidden to eat on Tisha B'Av. So you know the next day you're not going to eat. So therefore, it says that you're hungry. All of a sudden, you're hungry. So it says that's a way that God tortured the Jews in the desert. They had food for one day, but they didn't have any food for the next day. They weren't sure if they were going to get anything. So, that made them hungry. The uncertainty and the awareness that it could be that things will just be the way it is now. So that made them already hungry. They didn't, in other words, what's the point in common with, you don't have anything ready to eat for the next day. Right? On Yom Kippur, it's forbidden to eat. But it's in your mind that's it. You haven't got any food for the next day because you're not going to eat. The same thing was in the desert. They had it in their mind. Who knows where the food's going to come? They didn't have anything in their pantry. Your garments, they didn't wear out, and your feet never got cracks in them or anything. 40 years they wandered around the desert. They never changed their clothes or their shoes. Why not? 40 years is a long time. Anani kavod says the clouds of glory, they would clean their garments, and they would also press them like kelim meguatzim, so they'd always look fresh and with a crease. Even the small children, as they were growing up, the garments would grow with them. Shel chomet like the garment of a lizard, that when a baby lizard, I never noticed this, but it grows together with it. grows together with the animal. Not because of your righteousness, not because that you're so righteous does God love you. Here, 1 second, 1 minute. Why did he throw the sentence in here? 1 second. It says, your garments never wore out. Yeah, this is what we just finished. Okay, let's go further. You should know with your heart. Like sometimes a father has to spank his son. Hashem Elokecha miyasrecha. The God also, he is like chastising you, put you in your place. He says, the Sophrona says that God gives you in his commandments musar. Musar nos al shlemos hamakuvan ito. There are all these commandments that are forbidden to do. You're not allowed to take vengeance on someone. You're not allowed to kill. You're not allowed to this, to lie. So God is telling you, don't do these things. A person can say, come on, I'm not a liar. I'm not going to kill anybody. You don't have to tell me that. That's a little bit sort of, how do you say, disgraceful. Right? What do you think? You're suspecting me that I'm going to kill? God said, you don't have to go so far. In the 10 commandments I commanded you. That's what the Torah is. Right? The Torah is given to people who are potential liars and cheaters and etc. That's what the commandments do. For shamartam mitzvot, you should do the commandments. Ushamartam et mitzvot Hashem. You should do the commandments of God, your God, and go into his ways and fear him, because God will bring you to this good land, a land which is flowing rivers, ayanos, well springs, tahomos, deep places, and that come from the clefts of rocks and the mountains. Beautiful places. It's all for you. Eretz Chitos Eretz, a land of wheat and barley, Gefen Uteina Brimon, and grapes, figs, and pomegranates. Eretz Zitz Shemen Davash, a land of olives, olive oil, and Davash means the sap from dates. This was figs. Te'ena is figs, and this is dates. This, by the way, is how we learn a special law about what order to make the blessings. Let's say you have in front of you, it's like Tu B'Shvat, and you have in front of you all these fruits that the land of Israel is praised by. Praised by. What's it praised? The land of Israel is praised by grapes and olives and figs and dates and pomegranates. Those 5. So you have in front of you, which do you make a blessing on? You want to eat them all. It's a thing to make an eating, right? You eat. Which one should you eat first? You make a blessing on one, you eat it. Which one should you eat first? So it says, what you have to do is, there's 2 times it says Eretz in this sentence. So you have to see whichever fruit is closest to the word Eretz, that fruit comes first. Whichever one is, you have 2 Eretzes. So it says, okay, if one, there are 2 words. One is, let's say, 3 words from this Eretz, and the other one is 3 words from this one. So we take the first one that has precedence. So let's see. Here you have all these 5 things laying in front of you. What do you do? Eretz Chita Osaora, a land of wheat and barley. Okay, those aren't fruits yet, right? So let's see. The Geffen and grapes. So grapes is 3 words from Eretz. Right. So if you have on this a table in front of you, grapes and figs and pomegranates and olives all together, right? Grapes and figs and dates and pomegranates and olives. You have all these 5. Which one should you take first to make the blessing? So it says, well, let's see which here we got Eretz Chita Sora Geffen. Geffen, that's the first one that comes in the sentence. So probably we'll make a blessing on Geffen, on grapes first. It's not so fast. Geffen comes 3 words after the word Eretz. Maybe there's another fruit that comes less words after Eretz. It says, sure. Zayat. Olives. Olives comes right after the word Eretz. So therefore, if you have all these 5 types, you bless on the olives first. Olives first. Then you have number 2, Dvash. What's that? That's dates. So good, that's it. That's what you do. So you have all these in front of you. Yeah, first of all, you should eat olives, because that's number 1 from the word Eretz. Then you should eat dates, because dates is 2 words from the word Eretz. And now, what's 3 words from the word Eretz? What's 3 words from the Eretz? Geffen. Oh, then we have grapes. And after that, we have figs. And last of all, on the order of preference, order of blessings, is the pomegranate. That's the order of things you should bless in. The land which you won't eat bread in poverty. Nothing is missing in it. Eretz Asher Avanel Barzel, the ground, there are stones that are like iron, and the mountains are like copper. Oh, so let's just do one more, and that's it. So the land, and there's the land of Israel, is very bountiful and very plentiful, very beautiful, and it'll provide you all of your food, but you have to bless God and thank God afterwards. You will eat and be satisfied, and you will bless God on the good land, Eretz Tova, that He's given to you. As this will, God willing, discuss more tomorrow. Have a good day with Mashiach now. See you tomorrow at 8:15 in the morning.